The mockery begins in a distant part of the galaxy. The alien empire of Zorith stood as an untouchable force. They had conquered countless worlds. Their technology far beyond anything humans could imagine. They had seen countless species rise and fall before them, and to them, humans were no different, just another primitive race, destined to be crushed under their might. For centuries, the Zorith had mocked humanity. From their towering cities to their deadly war machines, the Zorith had built an empire that stretched across the stars. They thought humans were nothing more than a fleeting nuisance, barely worth the time and energy to conquer. They saw the small human colonies on distant planets as insignificant, almost laughable. The Zorith Emperor, Vorkin, sat on his grand throne, looking down at the galaxy with a cruel smile. He watched as humans struggled to survive, knowing that their defenses were no match for his empire. His advisors were already planning the next great conquest, one that would completely wipe out the last remnants of human resistance. Why bother with them? Vorkin mused aloud. Their technology is outdated. Their fleet is a joke. We could crush them in the blink of an eye. Around him, his generals nodded, their faces blank with agreement. They had seen it all before. The humans had tried to fight back, but every battle ended the same way, with their ships destroyed and their cities reduced to ashes. The Zorith Empire was unstoppable, and the humans, in their eyes, were nothing more than ants to be crushed beneath their feet. But in the shadows of the galaxy, things were beginning to change. Humans were not as weak as the Zorith believed. In secret, a rebellion was rising. A group of brilliant minds, both military and scientific, had come together, determined to prove the Zorith wrong. They knew they couldn't win with brute force alone, so they began working on something far more dangerous, an armada that could rival the might of the Zorith Empire. In a hidden base on the edge of a barren moon, a human commander named Captain Elias Morgan stood in front of a massive holographic display, his eyes scanning the images of the fleet being constructed. The plans had been in motion for years, and now they were nearly complete. A fleet of ships designed not only to fight but to outsmart the Zorith in ways they could never predict. Morgan knew that they could not let the aliens see it coming. How much longer? Morgan asked, his voice low but filled with intensity. His chief engineer, a woman named Dr. Sarah Lang, nodded. It's almost ready, Captain. The ships are built and the weapons systems are being tested. We've got one shot at this. If we fail, well, we won't get a second chance. Morgan turned toward the display. We won't fail, he said, his voice hard with determination. The Zorith think we're weak, that we're insignificant. Let's make sure they remember just how wrong they are. Meanwhile, on the Zorith homeworld, Emperor Vorkin was being entertained by his generals. The halls of his palace echoed with laughter as they mocked the human attempts to fight back. Can you imagine? One of his generals said, chuckling, humans with their pathetic little fleet. They'll never stand a chance against our armada. The Emperor laughed, a deep, echoing sound that reverberated throughout the grand hall. Indeed, he said, his eyes gleaming with amusement, the humans are nothing. Their pride is their greatest flaw. But little did Vorkin know, the humans had been planning something far beyond his wildest expectations. While he and his generals were celebrating their own superiority, Captain Morgan and his crew were assembling a fleet that would soon strike at the heart of the Zorith Empire. Across the stars, the Zorith fleet was confident and unprepared. They believed their superiority was unchallenged, their weapons were unmatched, and their ships were faster, stronger, and more advanced than anything the humans could ever build. The thought of humans challenging them was laughable, but then something strange happened. One of the Zorith warships, the Valkor, picked up an unusual signal from deep within human space. At first, it seemed like just another minor glitch, a static interference, but then the signal became clearer. It was a transmission, unmistakable in its intent. A message sent from the farthest reaches of human territory, deep within the core of human space, and it was aimed directly at the heart of the Zorith Empire. The message was simple. We're coming back on the Zorith homeworld. The laughter died down. The generals exchanged uneasy glances. What is this? Vorkin demanded, his voice now tinged with confusion. A message from the humans? How is that possible? His communications officer scrambled to respond, but the message had already been broadcast across the galaxy, carrying with it the promise of something unexpected. The Zorith didn't know it yet, but the humans were about to show them something they could never have imagined. The Zorith had underestimated humanity, and it was a mistake they would soon regret. As Captain Morgan and Dr. Lang watched the message reach the Zorith fleet, their faces were filled with quiet satisfaction. The time for hiding was over. The humans were ready, and they would soon learn that the might of the Zorith Empire was no match for the resilience of humanity. The mockery had begun, but it would not end the way the Zorith expected. *The secret. Armadoth stars twinkled softly in the vast expanse of space. far from the eyes of the Zorth Empire where the humans had begun their quiet revolution. On a cold, barren moon hidden deep within the far reaches of human territory, a group of engineers, scientists, and military leaders worked tirelessly day and night. Their task was monumental, creating a fleet capable of not just defending humanity, but shaking the foundations of the Zorth Empire itself. Captain Elias Morgan paced back and forth in his command center, the hum of the machinery and the low murmur of conversations filling the air. Every moment felt like a lifetime as he stared at the massive holographic map of the galaxy. The Zorth Empire's reach was vast, and their warships were formidable, but Captain Morgan had a plan. A plan that no one, not even the Zorth, would see coming. Dr. Sarah Lang, the brilliant chief engineer behind the fleet's design, stood by a console, her fingers flying over the controls as she adjusted the specifications of the new ships. The weapon systems were unlike anything the humans had ever used before, a combination of both cutting-edge technology and unconventional tactics. This fleet wasn't just built to fight. It was built to outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast the Zorth. "We're almost there," Dr. Lang said, her voice steady but with a hint of excitement. "The final phase of testing begins tomorrow. The new energy shields are holding up under extreme conditions, and the hyperdrive systems are working perfectly." Morgan nodded. "Good. The Zorth think they know everything about us, but they have no idea what's coming. This fleet will be their nightmare across the galaxy." The Zorth continued to mock humanity, certain that the humans' transmission was nothing more than an empty threat. They had dismissed the message as a final, desperate plea, a cry of a species too weak to fight back. The alien leaders laughed, toasting their impending victory to them. The humans were nothing more than ants, too small and insignificant to ever truly challenge their empire. Emperor Vorkin, seated on his golden throne, gazed out over his empire with a cold smile. "Their bravado is pathetic," he muttered to his council, "a pathetic attempt to intimidate us. Soon we'll wipe them from the galaxy, and there will be nothing left but their ashes." The Zorth generals agreed, their confidence unwavering. They had faced countless enemies over the years, and every single one had crumbled beneath their might. The humans would be no different. The fact that they had dared to send such a message was nothing more than a foolish, empty gesture, but deep within the human fleet, something was happening that the Zorth could never have predicted. In a quiet, secured room aboard the flagship Vigilance, Captain Morgan stood before a towering holographic display. The image of the Zorth Empire's farthest reaches appeared before him, outlining the path his fleet would soon take. His fingers hovered over the controls as he spoke with calm determination. "Once we make the jump, there's no turning back. The Zorth won't know what hit them. Are you sure we're ready?" Dr. Lang's voice came from behind him. She had always been the cautious one, the one who kept their feet grounded even in the most uncertain of times. "We have to be," Morgan replied, turning to face her. "The Zorth may have the numbers, but we have the element of surprise. We're not just sending ships, we're sending a message. We won't just fight them, Sarah. We'll make them fear us." The plan was set in motion. The secret Armada, a fleet of sleek, powerful warships unlike any the Zorth had seen, was ready. These ships weren't just built for combat. They were designed to defy everything the Zorth believed about humanity. They would use the Zorth's own arrogance against them. The fleet had been constructed in silence, hidden in the asteroid fields of human space, far from the prying eyes of alien spies. The human ships were not only faster and more maneuverable, but their design incorporated new technologies, energy shields that could absorb and redirect enemy fire, weapons that could disable entire fleets without firing a single shot, and stealth capabilities that made their ships nearly invisible to traditional sensors. As the final preparations were made, Captain Morgan stood in front of his crew, his expression unwavering. "This is it. We are not just fighting for our survival, we are fighting for our future. We are fighting for humanity." The crew, a diverse group of men and women from across human space, stood at attention, their faces set with determination. They knew the risks, but they also knew the stakes. If they failed, humanity would be wiped from the stars. But if they succeeded, they would show the galaxy that humanity was not weak, not helpless, and that the Zorth Empire had made a grave mistake. The moment of truth arrived. The human fleet, now a force of dozens of ships, each one a symbol of humanity's resolve, made its first jump into Zorth-controlled space. The Zorth had no idea what was coming. They had no idea that their empire was about to be stunned, that their laughter would soon turn to fear. The first battle would be fought not with weapons, but with the very hearts of the men and women who had dared to defy the galaxy's most powerful empire. As the human fleet emerged from hyperspace, Captain Morgan's voice rang out across the comms. "This is the beginning. The Zorth will never laugh at us again. Asterisk, the first strike silence of space was broken only by the soft hum of the human fleet's engines. The Armada, newly assembled and brimming with human ingenuity, now drifted toward the heart of the Zorith Empire. The moment had arrived, everything they had worked for. Every sleepless night, every risk was about to be tested. Captain Elias Morgan stood at the bridge of the Vigilance, his eyes fixed on the stars ahead. The coordinates were locked in, the enemy fleet was still some distance away. And yet the tension in the room was palpable. His crew was quiet, each member waiting for the first command. Knowing that this moment would decide the fate of millions, Captain Dr. Lang said from her console, "We've confirmed all systems are operational, shields at full power. Weapons primed." Morgan took a deep breath. Prepare for the first jump. The human fleet, a fleet born from secrecy and necessity, activated their hyperdrives and surged forward, slipping through space like shadows. The Zorith had never seen anything like it. The human ships, sleek and nearly invisible, moved with an uncanny precision as if they were one living entity. As the fleet emerged from hyperspace, they found themselves staring directly at the Zorith's outer defense perimeter, an enemy they had once thought to be unstoppable. For a moment, the Zorith didn't even know they were there. The human ships, designed with advanced cloaking technology, slipped under the radar, moving silently through the vastness of space. It wasn't until the first shot was fired that the Zorith fleet realized something was horribly wrong. The Vigilance fired its first salvo, a single, calculated shot that struck the lead Zorith battleship with the force of a thunderclap. The ship's shields flickered, then failed. The massive warship shuddered under the impact, and its hull was torn apart in a series of controlled explosions. The Zorith had never seen such precision before, never imagined that a species they had dismissed as primitive could strike with such deadly accuracy. Target locked, the tactical officer called. Next ship in range. Morgan's eyes were cold with determination, fired another explosion tore through the void, this time hitting the second Zorith ship. The alien fleet, which had once towered over humanity's forces, was now fighting back confusion. Their advanced technology, their superior numbers, all of it was suddenly useless against the unexpected onslaught. The humans weren't just attacking, they were surgically dismantling their fleet, one ship at a time. On the Zorith flagship Valkor, Emperor Vorkin sat in his command chair, staring in disbelief at the damage reports. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice rising. "How can this be? Our sensors, they can't detect them." The Zorith officers scrambled to understand what was happening. They had expected humanity to fight like they always had, chaotic, desperate, and disorganized, but the humans were something else entirely. The Zorith had underestimated them in the worst possible way. As the battle raged on, the Zorith forces began to regroup, attempting to retaliate. Massive warships turned their weapons toward the human fleet, unleashing devastating barrages of energy, but the humans were faster. They used the Zorith's arrogance against them, slipping through their defenses with ease, hitting them where it hurt the most, at the heart of their fleet. One by one, the Zorith ships fell. Each explosion was a testament to humanity's unyielding resolve. The human fleet, small in number but precise in action, moved like a swarm of hornets, striking with deadly accuracy and disappearing before the enemy could react. The Zorith, once so sure of their superiority, were now fighting for their survival. On the bridge of the Vigilance, Captain Morgan's voice was steady but filled with resolve. "Keep pushing forward. We've come this far, and we're not stopping now. For every ship we take down, they'll understand just how wrong they were about us." Dr. Lang, standing beside him, looked out at the battlefield, her face illuminated by the glowing holographic displays. "They thought we were weak. They thought we were nothing. Let's make sure they never forget the mistake they made." As the human fleet continued its assault, the Zorith fleet began to fracture. Their once proud armada, brimming with arrogance and overconfidence, was now nothing more than a scattering of debris and broken ships. The humans were winning, and with each victory, they sent a clear message to the Zorith Empire. Humanity was not to be underestimated, but the battle was far from over. The Zorith Emperor, now fully aware of the threat, rallied what was left of his fleet. He would not surrender, not without a fight. His pride, his empire, and his legacy were on the line. The humans had dealt the first blow, but the war was far from decided. "Send the message," Vorkin ordered through clenched teeth. "All ships, regroup. We are not losing to these humans." As the remaining Zorith ships formed a desperate line of defense, the humans pressed on, determined to prove that their spirit was unbreakable. They had started this battle as underdogs, but they would finish it as victors. And the Zorith would learn, far too late, that humanity's strength didn't come from technology alone, it came from something far more dangerous: their will to survive. The first strike had been a success, but the real fight was only just Beginnings asterisk the tide turns. The battle had started with a sudden, shocking strike. But now, with the first wave of Zorith ships crippled and their confidence shattered, the true scale of the human rebellion began to reveal itself. Captain Elias Morgan stood at the helm of the Vigilance, watching the battlefield unfold on the massive holoscreen before him. The Zorith fleet, though in disarray, was not yet defeated. The humans had inflicted damage, but they had underestimated the resolve of the alien empire. Captain, the Zorith are regrouping, the tactical officer reported, his voice tight with urgency. They're forming a defensive perimeter around their flagship. Morgan clenched his jaw, studying the display. The Zorith, once overconfident, were now playing their hand cautiously. Their fleet was no longer scattered but focused, each ship bristling with weaponry, ready to make their final stand. The time for stealth and precision was over. It was now a full-scale battle. Prepare for Phase 2, Morgan commanded, his voice firm. We're not just here to fight, we're here to break them. As the human fleet moved into position, Dr. Sarah Lang stood at her station, watching the screens in front of her. We've got the advantage of surprise, she muttered under her breath, adjusting the controls. But if we get too close to that flagship, we'll be sitting ducks. Morgan looked over at her, his face resolute. We'll be ready. We've trained for this. The Zorith, who had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, were now beginning to see the consequences of their arrogance. The human ships were not just fast and nimble, they were innovative, unpredictable. Each human vessel seemed to be part of a greater whole, a perfectly orchestrated attack that was difficult to anticipate. But the Zorith Empire had one final card to play, a card that could either turn the tide in their favor or seal their doom. From the heart of their fleet, the Valkor, the largest and most advanced warship in their entire armada, the Zorith Emperor Vorkin issued an order that would set the stage for the next act of the war. Deploy the Zorithian vanguard, Vorkin said, his voice cold and commanding. We will crush them with our might. Show these humans what true power looks like. The Zorithian vanguard was a monstrous warship unlike anything the humans had encountered before. It was heavily armed, equipped with weapons capable of decimating entire fleets in a single strike. Its size was overwhelming, its firepower unmatched. The Zorith believed this ship would be the key to their victory, a force so powerful that the humans would be forced to surrender. As the Zorithian vanguard moved forward, the human fleet faltered. The Zorith's deadly weapon loomed large on their scanners, its energy shields flashing with brutal intensity. The Vigilance crew held their breath, knowing this battle was about to take a dangerous turn. Captain, Dr. Lang warned, her eyes wide with concern. If that ship gets within range, we won't stand a chance. We need to get in close, hit them with everything we have, and fast. Morgan nodded, his mind racing. This was no longer just a battle for survival. This was the moment that would define humanity's future. They could not back down, not now. All ships, prepare for close combat, Morgan ordered, his voice steely. We hit them now. With everything we've got, no retreat, no second chances. The human fleet surged forward, their ships weaving in and out of fire as they closed the gap between themselves and the Zorithian vanguard. The Zorith, in their arrogance, had expected the humans to back off, to retreat in the face of overwhelming power, but instead, the humans advanced, pushing forward with a fury they had never imagined. The first volley of shots from the Zorithian vanguard ripped through space, sending shockwaves that rattled the human ships. The energy shields on the Vigilance flared brightly as the blasts hammered against them, yet, despite the overwhelming power of the Zorith's weaponry, the human fleet pressed on. Brace for impact, Morgan shouted as another wave of fire smashed into their shields. Hold steady. The Vigilance shuddered violently, but the shields held strong with each blast. The humans' confidence grew, their resolve solidifying. The Zorith had underestimated the strength of human determination, their willingness to fight, even in the face of certain destruction. Then, with a sudden, coordinated strike, the humans launched a devastating counterattack. A series of precision-guided missiles, powered by the advanced energy systems they had developed, hit the Zorithian vanguard with pinpoint accuracy. The first missile struck its port side, disabling a large section of its outer hull. The second missile followed, smashing into the ship's energy core, sending a massive shockwave through the battlefield. Direct hit, the tactical officer cried, his voice filled with disbelief. The Zorithian vanguard staggered, its massive form listing to one side as sparks flew from its damaged core. For the first time, the Zorith were on the defensive. The humans had landed a blow they never saw coming. Now's our chance, Morgan shouted. Push forward, finish it. The remaining human ships moved in for the kill. With the Zorithian vanguard crippled, the remaining Zorith ships tried desperately to regroup. But it was too late. The human fleet, once dismissed, as a joke, was now dealing the Zorth Empire a devastating blow. The Vigilance fired once more, this time hitting the heart of the Zorothian vanguard. The massive warship erupted in a series of explosive bursts, its hull shattering under the combined firepower of the human fleet on the Zoreth flagship. Emperor Vorkin stared in disbelief at the destruction unfolding on his screens. His once proud empire, now reeling from the unexpected counterattack, was on the brink of collapse. The humans were no longer a threat, they were a force to be reckoned with. As the Zorothian vanguard fell, the human fleet pressed forward, more determined than ever. They had just turned the tide of the battle, and the Zoreth Empire would never look at them the same way again. Into the heart of the Empirith, aftermath of the destruction of the Zorothian vanguard had sent shockwaves through both fleets. For the first time in centuries, the Zoreth Empire was not the one pushing forward, it was retreating, scrambling to regroup, and trying to make sense of what had just transpired. They had thought that humanity's rise was nothing more than a fleeting dream, a brief spark that would quickly fade. But now, they had been forced to confront the hard truth. The humans were a force to be reckoned with. Captain Elias Morgan stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, staring out at the shattered remains of the once mighty Zoreth fleet. The stars ahead seemed to burn brighter than ever, and for a moment he felt a surge of hope. The impossible had become real. The humans had struck a decisive blow, and the Zoreth, once so invincible, were now struggling to keep control. Captain, Dr. Sarah Lang's voice broke his reverie. We've received a message from the command center. The Zoreth are regrouping around their capital world. They're consolidating their remaining forces for a final stand. Morgan didn't need to hear any more. He already knew what had to be done. Set course for their homeworld, he said, his voice resolute. We take the fight to them. The time for waiting is over. This ends now. The human fleet shifted direction, heading straight into the heart of the Zoreth Empire. For the first time, the Zoreth realized that the humans were not afraid. They were not retreating. They were coming for the one thing the Zoreth held most sacred, their capital, their throne, their symbol of invincibility. As the human fleet approached the Zoreth homeworld, the alien ships formed a massive blockade, an impenetrable line of defense. The sheer size of their forces was overwhelming, their ships far more advanced than anything the humans had encountered. But the humans had come prepared. They knew they couldn't win by strength alone. They had to outthink the Zoreth, use their own arrogance against them. The Vigilance led the charge, its crew already bracing for the battle of their lives. As they neared the blockade, Morgan's voice rang out, calm and steady. All ships, prepare to execute the strategy. Remember, we're not here to fight for survival anymore. We're here to win. We're here to show them that humanity will never be their prey. The human fleet split into multiple groups, each ship positioned precisely as planned, their cloaking devices engaged, and the Zoreth fleet, still overconfident, didn't realize that the humans had already outmaneuvered them. The human ships moved like shadows, slipping through the Zoreth's defenses with ease, appearing in places where the enemy never expected. The Zoreth, caught off guard, scrambled to adjust. But by the time they realized the danger, the human fleet had already dealt a devastating blow to their outer defenses. Strategic missile strikes disabled several Zoreth warships in quick succession, leaving them vulnerable. The humans had learned from their previous encounters, each strike was calculated, precise, and timed to perfection. Target the command ship, Morgan ordered, his eyes fixed on the Zoreth flagship, the Valkor. The flagship was still operational, but its shield had been weakened by earlier attacks. This was the moment to strike. The human fleet surrounded the Zoreth flagship, and in a series of coordinated moves, the humans launched a barrage of energy blasts and precision missiles aimed directly at the flagship's vulnerable core. The Zoreth flagship tried to retaliate, but its weapon systems were already compromised. The Valkor shuddered as the first blast hit, followed by another and another. Its shields flickered and faltered, the mighty warship now struggling to stay afloat. Inside the Valkor, Emperor Vorkin watched in disbelief as his empire's heart bled before his eyes. His fleet had been decimated and his flagship was on the verge of falling. Retreat, Vorkin ordered, but it was too late. His ships, now scattered and disorganized, couldn't mount a successful defense. The humans had them surrounded, their every move predictable. The human ships closed in for the final strike. Knowing this battle would decide the fate of the galaxy, the Vigilance fired once more, sending a final, decisive blast toward the Valkor. The explosion lit up the void, and the Zoreth flagship, once a symbol of invincibility, was reduced to nothing but debris for a moment. The battlefield was silent. The Zoreth fleet had been broken, their defenses shattered. The humans had won. Morgan stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, watching the wreckage of the Valkor drift through space. The victory was complete, but there was no time to celebrate. The next phase of the plan was already in motion. "We did it," Dr. Lang whispered. Her voice filled with awe. "We've taken their capital." Morgan didn't smile, though he felt a quiet pride. "This is just the beginning. The Zorith Empire has fallen, but the war for the galaxy is far from over. There will be other threats. We must be ready." The human fleet moved into orbit around the now-destroyed capital world. Securing the victory, the Zorith Empire, once the dominant force in the galaxy, had been brought to its knees by the most unlikely of foes, humanity. But as the humans celebrated their hard-won victory, the stars ahead seemed darker, filled with untold possibilities. The galaxy was no longer under the control of the Zorith, but what would come next? As Morgan gazed out at the destroyed remains of the Zorith capital, a thought crossed his mind. The Zorith had once believed themselves to be the rulers of the galaxy. Now, it was humanity's turn to rise, but with that rise came new challenges. The universe had taken notice of humanity's strength, and not all the attention would be welcome. The final battle stars above the now-defeated Zorith capital world glittered with an eerie stillness. The empire that had once ruled with an iron fist was now on the brink of collapse, its once mighty fleet scattered and broken. But even in the ashes of their defeat, something stirred, something that had been quietly waiting, watching and listening in the shadows. Captain Elias Morgan stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, staring out at the wreckage of the Zorith flagship. The Valkor, the human fleet, had delivered the final blow to the heart of the Empire. But the war was not yet over. The battle against the Zorith had been hard fought. But Morgan knew that there was something much darker lurking in the galaxy, waiting to challenge humanity's newfound dominance. "We've won, Captain," Dr. Sarah Lang said. Her voice tinged with exhaustion but also relief. "We've destroyed their capital. Their fleet is in tatters. It's over." Morgan nodded. But his face remained serious. "It's over for the Zorith, yes. But this is just the beginning of something much larger. We've made waves across the galaxy. Other powers will take notice of our strength, and they won't take kindly to it." Dr. Lang turned to him, her brows furrowing. "What are you saying?" "The Zorith were the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Who could possibly challenge us now?" Morgan took a long pause, his eyes scanning the debris field ahead. "There are forces out there far beyond the Zorith. We may have defeated an empire, but there are others in the galaxy watching us now, wondering whether we're a threat or an opportunity." Just as he finished speaking, a series of blips appeared on the radar screen, one by one, like distant stars emerging from the darkness. The human fleet was too busy celebrating its victory to notice at first. But soon the crew aboard the Vigilance became aware of the unmistakable patterns on their sensors. Something large was coming fast. "Captain," the communications officer called out, his voice filled with disbelief. "We've got incoming ships, hundreds of them, from the far side of the planet. They're not human." Morgan's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, not human? Identify them." A voice crackled over the intercom, coming from the chief tactical officer. "They're unknown. They're massive, larger than anything we've ever seen, and they're closing in fast." Morgan's mind raced. The victory they had fought so hard for was now at risk of turning into a nightmare. There was no time to prepare. There was no time for anything. "We need to get out of here now," he ordered, but before he could even finish his sentence, the alien fleet was upon them. The unknown fleet was massive, its ships black as the void, with jagged, spiked designs that resembled predators more than anything human-made. They moved like a storm of darkness, surrounding the human fleet from every angle. There was no escape. There was no way to retreat. Morgan's crew scrambled to respond, but the overwhelming force of the alien fleet left them little room to maneuver. The enemy ships opened fire with weapons that made the Zorith's arsenal look primitive. The first blast hit the Vigilance, shaking the entire ship to its core. The shields flared brightly, but Morgan knew that if they didn't do something soon, they would be wiped out completely. "Return fire!" Morgan shouted, gripping the command console tightly. "We're not backing down." The human ships unleashed everything they had, but the unknown fleet was relentless. With every blast, the alien ships seemed to absorb the damage, growing more dangerous with each passing second. "Captain, we can't hold them off much longer." Dr. Lang yelled over the chaos. "They're too powerful. We need a new strategy. We need something more." Morgan didn't hesitate. "We'll use their strength against them. This time, we're going to make them underestimate us once again." He quickly ordered a series of tactical maneuvers that had never been tested before. Something risky, something desperate. The human fleet split into smaller groups, moving in erratic patterns to confuse the alien ships. The plan was simple: make them think the humans were scattered, easy targets. And once the aliens took the bait, they would hit hard right at the heart of the unknown fleet. For a moment, it seemed to work. The alien ships, caught off guard, adjusted their formation to hunt down the smaller groups of humans. The human fleet fought with everything they had, launching surprise attacks and using the alien ship's own aggression against them. But it was still an uphill battle. The humans were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future. They had just begun to claim Dodd. As the battle raged on, Morgan's mind raced. There had to be something more, something they could do to turn the tide. Just as the alien fleet began to overwhelm them, a solution came to him, a final, daring move that would either seal humanity's fate or deliver them the victory they desperately needed. Dr. Lang, he said, his voice hard with resolve. I need everything we've got. Prepare the main cannon. Now. Lang's eyes widened. The main cannon? Are you insane? It's not ready for this kind of pressure. The power drain will be catastrophic. We don't have a choice, Morgan said, his gaze unyielding. If we don't take them out now, we're finished, with a grim determination. Dr. Lang began to override the ship's power systems, the main cannon, a weapon designed to strike with unparalleled force. Powered up slowly, the energy building within the vigilance. It was humanity's last shot, literally. Ready, Captain, Lang said, her voice tense. Morgan gave the command, fire. The blast that followed was unlike anything the Zorith or the humans had ever experienced. The energy from the main cannon rippled across the void, slamming into the heart of the alien fleet. The first shot struck with pinpoint accuracy, obliterating the largest of the unknown ships. A chain reaction began, and within moments, the alien fleet started to disintegrate. The destruction unfolding at a terrifying pace. The surviving alien ships, now crippled and in disarray, retreated, their once imposing presence reduced to scattered remnants. Morgan exhaled deeply as the chaotic sounds of battle began to die down. They had done it. They had struck down the unknown invaders, but not without paying a heavy price. The human fleet was battered, their ships in ruins, yet, as the debris floated in the vast emptiness of space, there was no mistaking it. Humanity had won. But this victory came with a terrifying truth. There were more enemies out there, more powerful than the Zorith, more relentless than anything they had faced before. The war was far from over, and as Morgan stood there staring out at the void, he realized that humanity had only just begun its journey to rise. The new Arath aftermath of the final battle left the galaxy shrouded in a haunting stillness. The stars, once silent witnesses to humanity's struggle, now seemed to glow a little brighter. As if acknowledging the humans' victory, the fleet, battered and bruised, drifted silently in space, surrounded by the wreckage of the once immense alien armadas. The victorious humans were left to pick up the pieces. But the future that stretched before them was uncertain and far from peaceful. Captain Elias Morgan stood at the helm of the Vigilance, gazing out at the shattered remnants of the unknown enemy's fleet. The cold silence of space weighed heavily on him. The battle had been won. But there was no celebration, no time to savor the victory. The price had been too high. The fleet was a fraction of what it had been, and many lives had been lost. But it wasn't just the humans who had been affected. The entire galaxy was shifting. Captain Dr. Sarah Lang said, her voice breaking the silence, we've defeated them. But the Zorith's defeat was just the beginning. This changes everything. Morgan turned to her, his face worn but determined. Yes, it does. But we can't afford to let our guard down. This was just the first wave. There are other powers out there waiting. The galaxy has noticed what we've done, and now they'll be watching, wondering whether we are the next great empire to rise or just another fallen star. Lang nodded. She understood what Morgan meant. The unknown fleet, the one that had caught humanity off guard, had been just one piece of a much larger puzzle. There were forces beyond their comprehension, forces that wouldn't take kindly to humanity's rise. But there was also a greater truth to acknowledge. Humanity had proved that they were not to be underestimated. They were survivors. We need to make contact with the other human colonies, Lang suggested. We can't stand alone forever. We need to unite what's left of us, strengthen our forces. Morgan smiled grimly. I agree, but first, we need to rebuild not just our ships or our defenses. We need to rebuild humanity's place in the galaxy. We need to make sure the galaxy knows who we are, what we're capable of. The Vigilance and the remaining human ships made their way toward the nearest human colony. Now united in their shared struggle, there was no victory parade, no triumphant speeches. There was only the harsh reality that, though humanity had survived, they had only just begun to carve out their place among the stars. As the ships entered the atmosphere of a small planet, one of the last human colonies that had yet to fall under Zorith rule, Morgan couldn't help but think back on the day the Zorith had laughed at them, seeing them as nothing more than a fleeting threat. How far they had come since then. How much they had achieved. Humanity, against all odds, had fought for its place, and now they would begin the hard work of building something new. But there was no time for rest. The stars were vast. And even though they had defeated two powerful empires, more would rise to challenge them. And beyond the galaxy, in the dark void of space, ancient forces stirred. Forces that had long been hidden from human eyes, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The human fleet was not just a military force now, it had become a symbol of what humanity could achieve when pushed to the brink. The threat from the Zorith and the unknown invaders had been dealt with. But the real battle lay ahead, the battle for the future of the galaxy. Morgan stood at the helm of the Vigilance, watching the stars with a mixture of pride and caution. "We've made it this far," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "But now, we must choose who we want to be." A voice from behind him interrupted his thoughts. "Captain," Lang called, "I think you should see this." Turning, Morgan saw her standing by a communications console, her face reflecting the glow of a transmission just received. "What is it?" "We've intercepted a message from an unknown source," she said, her voice tinged with something like both fear and fascination. "It's a warning." Morgan's brow furrowed. "A warning from who?" Lang glanced up at him, her expression serious. "It's from another race, a race older than the Zorith, older than anything we've encountered. They say they've been watching us, and now they've decided it's time to meet us face to face." Morgan's heart skipped a beat. The galaxy had always seemed vast, full of possibilities and dangers alike. But this was something new, a warning from an ancient race? What did that mean for humanity's future? "They say," Lang continued, "that we've just opened Pandora's box." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the crew of the Vigilance in stunned silence. It wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge, something larger than the Zorith, something more ancient and more powerful, and it was coming for humanity. Morgan looked out at the stars once more, his gaze steady. "Prepare the fleet," he said, the weight of the moment settling on his shoulders. "We've proven ourselves once, now we'll show them what humanity is capable of." The galaxy had no idea what was coming, but humanity was ready. They had faced extinction. They had risen from the ashes, and now they were about to face their greatest test yet. The universe was vast, full of unknowns. But one thing was certain, humanity's story was far from over, it was just beginning.